Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and Totally Awesome, Try Something New and Talk About It Tuesday. So I don't even know where to start. I tried so much stuff this week that, it was just a totally different week. First of all, Thanksgiving. It's the first Thanksgiving in a really long time that I haven't been able to spend with my family. So it was kind of interesting navigating the holiday alone. I have done that before in the past, so I had to remember back, exactly how to do it. And I think there's actually two ways to get through a holiday by yourself without feeling, kind of lonely and sad. And the first one is to reach out and do something like volunteering or invite somebody else who is spending the holiday alone. But with our current pandemic situation, that one didn't seem like an option. So the second one is to be like totally self-indulgent. Mm-hmm. So that's the one I opted for. So I, as a housewarming gift, actually to myself, I got a Ninja foodie. Because my sister and my sister-in-law had kind of raved about it, and I sampled, what my sister made with it over Labor Day, I think. And so anyway, I bought a selection of food that I could cook in that to try out. And I ended up having New York steak, baked potato, and grilled vegetables for Thanksgiving. And they were wonderful. And then I had chocolate mousse ice cream on a brownie with chocolate syrup for dessert. And yes, I am a chocoholic. And then I watched, really sappy romantic comedies all day. I kind of binge watched. So that was my way of doing Thanksgiving this year. And it wasn't bad, actually. I enjoyed it. Then the day after Thanksgiving, my water heater went out. So I got to experience, it just got fixed yesterday. So I got to experience a few days without hot water. And I could see why the, previous generations of people who didn't have running hot water took baths and washed their hair so infrequently. They had it even harder because they had to carry like water from the river or something. I washed my hair in the kitchen sink, heating up water on the stove. And I found it to be not the easiest thing in the world. So anyway, I could tell you all the other different things that made this week different, but I'd rather get to our great show we have planned for today. And my guest, I'm going to be talking with Dave Gerber. and he is the founder of Synergy Development and Training. He's a master teacher, coach, and speaker. And he has a black belt in Krav Maga, and he's an instructor in that. And he's also written about 12 books on various topics, most of them relating to business and helping organizations and professionals to increase wellness and revenue. But among them are about 6 children's books. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, is the children's books that he's written. So I'd like to introduce Dave. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good to be here.
So before we get started, I just gave a brief overview there. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to your current path?
Sure. So 17 years ago, I jumped off a perfectly good bridge and started my own business, as you said, doing conflict management, wellness, leadership development, coaching, those types of things. And one of the reasons why I started my own business is because I wanted to do some writing. So I've written, as you said, a fair number of books. And then on top of it, I decided I wanted to push myself with something a little bit different, which is in these kids' books. So that's how 17 years later on a winding road, having worked with, everyone from NASA to Fortune 500 to military and intelligence, government organizations, really enjoying that work and still do. I also, as I said, and as you said, sort of have gravitated for a small project, now 5 books, but a small project with the kids' books.
Okay. So was there something specific that motivated you to choose to write kids' books?
So I actually went to the New York Book Expo a couple years ago. I guess it must have been two years ago now, maybe. Yeah, 2 years ago, with a couple other book projects that I was looking to try and find a publisher for. And I noticed that there was this huge section of kids' books. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I mean, if there's this many kids' books, there must be a market that I really haven't been thinking about, as I said, as I've been focused on adult education for so long. So I said, that's really cool. I've never done that. I think it would be really interesting to be able to come back, so to speak, in the future, a year later, and be able to have a kid's book and to see what I could do in that market. How hard can it be to write a kid's book? And so I left there determined to write a kid's book and got the idea, and it just spiraled and I loved it. And so I just kept going.
Okay. So what gave you the idea for your kids' book series that we're going to be talking about, the journey of a robot to find a heart?
So when I left the expo, I sort of thought to myself, okay, well, what are you going to write about? And I sort of thought about, this was, like I said, it was 2017, 2018. The country's been in its own turmoil for lots of different reasons for the last several years. I've been doing work with adults. Adults are often frustrated. They're tired. They're multitasking. They're not really thinking about how to necessarily apply the training that they get because they may be inundated with so many things. Lots of reasons that adults struggle with, being overloaded. And I said, what if I soften my sort of one side of what I do? What if I were to just try and go back and work with young kids? And I used to teach high school, so and coach and do camps and stuff for middle school kid age and even younger. So I said, what if I just sort of go to the opposite end of the spectrum, go back to kids? They're so innocent and pure. And why don't I try and do a heart project? I felt like personally I needed something that would allow me to bring my heart in my work a little bit more. And I thought, as you've alluded to before, the show, that don't we all need a little bit more heart in our lives? And so for me, I thought, here's a feel-good project. And it's really cool because I already got to read at St. Jude Hospital as a volunteer. So it's already turned into a couple things that have allowed me to lead with the heart, as opposed to, in a lot of, as we know in the business community, we're leading with the head, and we're doing business that way. So that was the thing. And then I thought, what about like The Wizard of Oz? It's like sort of this classic movie that we all sort of understand. And I sort of see this book, A Robot's Journey to Find a Heart, as a modern day Tin Man story, so to speak. I think that is also really important. And some of the work that I was doing in context at the same time with adults was a radio show and podcast called Preparing for Robots. And the work that I was doing around anticipate pre-COVID, talking about how soon our society was going to change, and looking at different industries from government to corporate America all through, and seeing how fast everything was going to move. So I was already thinking about this technological side of things. And I thought, adults need to have a little bit more heart too. So if they're going to read to their kids, why not read to their kids about something that sort of brings them together around a heart project in their own home?
Ah, okay. Are you still doing that podcast?
No, I took a break from it. I think when COVID hit, people stopped really thinking about the rise of AI and started to think about how are they going to feed themselves, pay their bills, and working with a lot more Maslow basic stuff than this impending tsunami that is still coming. There's no doubt. It's now just unfortunately going to hit us even harder. And in some ways, it's going to knock out so many jobs that people who already have lost their jobs won't lose their jobs. But we're talking about, they say by 2030, 400 to 800 million global jobs. So that's a lot. And so that's another reason why I wrote a heart project. We need something positive,
Yeah. So what are the books about, and what do you want to achieve with those specific books?
So as I realized, what can I do to help move kids forward? I can help them learn to read. I can help them start to embrace diversity, and I can help them start to learn some of the life lessons that we as parents want our kids to know. And so I can do that all at one time. And it was a humorous story. So I went to my daughter and I said, hey, I've got this idea about this book that I'd like to write. And it's basically about you and I and a robot. And it goes on this journey to find a heart. And now my daughter has been involved in a lot of my projects. She worked with me on book projects around self-defense for kids. And so I think in some ways, at 9 or however old she was just kind of burnt out. She's like, I'm okay, Dad, and I thought about it, and I was like, no, this is the idea. So it was a funny story to me. One day I'm driving her to school and I said, hey, listen, I know we talked about it about a month ago about this book that I want to write. And I decided it's either going to be Jessie and her daddy or Jordan and her daddy. And I have no idea who Jordan is, but this is going to be about a girl and her father and the robot going to find a heart. Are you sure you don't want to be involved? And she's like, yeah, I want to do it. So it became another opportunity for me to bring my kid into my world and to help her also learn about the book process, and which she now actually just this past week put out her own motivational quote book, which she's been working on for 2 years, which is kind of cool. So I said, okay, we'll write this book, and let's see, I've got, I can try and hold it up for everybody.
Okay, good.
And so, it's a colorful story. Like I said, they get to embrace diversity. There's people of all backgrounds, and this robot goes on a journey to find a heart, and it became this sort of life of its own. I turned them all into coloring books. So, and I also, the first book, the one I just showed you, actually, I had translated into Spanish as well. So it's in Spanish, the first one, and then the rest of them are all of them are coloring books. So it's really geared towards age 3 to 7, so to speak, or maybe a little older if they want to read to their younger sibling. And they're good messages. And, the artist, the illustrator that I worked with was fantastic. And it's, you can see, and, like here's an example. Jesse and her daddy love animals. Do you love animals? So it's also interactive. So the book's actually talking, the robot's actually going through the whole story, talking to the reader. So it brings this whole interactive side to it as well.
Okay.
The one that just got finished, the fourth one, because the third one, they go around the world. So that gives an opportunity to bring in different cultures and different food and people who don't look the same, still with the same model in mind around diversity and life lessons. And then this one that just got released is this one called Under the Sea. So in this case, the robot's gone all around the world and still can't find it. So it goes under the sea. And the fifth one that's coming out, hopefully in 15 days, the robot goes up in space.
Okay.
That would be the last one.
So how old is your daughter?
So she just turned 15 years old now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So she was kind of getting to, go back to an earlier time in her life, maybe. So what was it like working with your daughter?
It's great. And it's actually obviously gotten better, as she's gotten older, and I've been able to include her more in the process, as we've been working even today on the slides that came over from the artist. I always ask her opinion before I share mine. And so I've just tried to model all those things and let her go through the experience. And that's been really fun to watch because it turned into her motivating to do her own book, which is really cool.
Yeah, that is. So has she given you any feedback on how she feels about working with Dad?
No, she hasn't. I think that and maybe some of your viewers who have teenagers can appreciate that we go from hero to zero, right around 12 and a half, 13 and a half. So as cool as I want to think I am, and my friends may like me, I'm still Dad. So she doesn't want to, share too much. But I think she's very appreciative of being in the process. I think as parents, we do things and we hope they look back and realize later on. One of the things I tell her, I said, someday the things you blame me for will be the things you thank me for. So hopefully down the road she will see and be happy. And I think it's good for her. It helps her portfolio. There aren't too many 15-year-olds who can say they have 7 books and have been a part of the process. Yeah. So that's cool.
So just to give her a little bit of a plug, what's your daughter's book called? So
her book is called, and what, I was going to put it on here, but I didn't know if I was supposed to. It's about motivational quotes for everyday living, daily inspiration for breaking. It's called Defying the Impossible: Motivational Quotes for Daily Inspiration. And just like all my books and these books, you can find it on Amazon as well. Her name is Jessie, so Jessie Gerber. And she's been working for 2.5 years. 15-year-old, when you read the quotes, even when I helped her, I read step book and I was like, this is sort of wisdom beyond her time. So it's pretty cool.
Yes, definitely.
And maybe not for today, but those people who like coloring books and like kids' books like this, I also just finished another one that's out on Amazon called Champ and the Professor. So if any of your audience are into martial arts or their kids are into Taekwondo, it's a book that I did with a friend of mine, colleague of mine, who's also a black belt, and it was called Champ and the Professor: A Black Belt Journey. So it reinforces the kind of things that parents want their kids to know: discipline, motivation, good grades, stretching, exercising, those kinds of things as well. So I've really enjoyed. It's kind of interesting, I've really enjoyed being a part of writing kids' books and the process of changing perspective and looking to see what I think they would like. It's really been very nice.
Yes, I think. Yeah.
Oh, and I even went so far, and the kids actually like this. I never thought I'd be on a webinar talking about my kids' book with a stuffed animal, but I think it's pretty cool. and the kids love it. And I use it when I do the recordings for like the hospital. And, everybody seems to like this robot, which is pretty cool. And hopefully,
that's a robot stuffed animal.
yeah, this is the robot from the book. It's the same robot. So
okay, is that just your prop, or is that something that people can buy?
I just have it for me for if I do a reading like on a webinar or for a kid. Like if I have a parent, sometimes I'll do a reading for their kid, and they just seem to love it. Everyone seems to like this little robot. It's really cool.
It is. It's cool.
Yeah.
So, not to be a spoiler or anything, but does the robot ever find a heart?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't, I think that maybe a better thing to share is that I actually went through this whole question myself as the author of writing the series. In some ways, you think the reader, especially a kid, may at the end of the book may want to say, "Oh, I got it," because there's this sense of kind of completion. So I did the conclusions and the end pages towards the end a little bit differently, and the robot doesn't find a heart. And I think it's interesting for me. It's because it is a parallel discussion that adults need to be thinking about with respect to work in the future. Robots in the future, artificial intelligence in the future. The only thing that they don't have that we do will be a heart, right? I mean, they're even talking about being in 30 years developing a consciousness for computers or emotions, but they're never going to have a heart. So for me, it was like, I don't know if I can sell out and give the robot a heart, but I don't want to disappoint the readers, all the way through. So I kind of make it feel in a way like the robot got a heart, but it never is actually there, if that makes sense.
No.
Well, I think that's why you have a series.
One of those things where I would have to read the book to see what that means.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that if the robot finds a heart at the end of book 1, you don't need book 2, 3, 4, or 5. Right.
So there won't be any more books in that series after number 5?
I don't know. It's a tough business, but I'm really trying to get this turned into either a cartoon or something on Apple TV or Facebook or Netflix, or, that's one of my goals in 2021 is to actually put the pedal down to try and move that forward. Because I think it'd be stronger than most of the cartoons that we're showing our kids on TV now. In terms of the purpose, its intention, what it offers kids in terms of healthy entertainment. But my daughter did come to me and say, "Dad, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be in it anymore." So, for me, it's one of those projects. I did 5 of them. There's coloring books. It really is a good project. And for now, I'll probably move forward and go back to finishing some of the other book projects that I want to
do. Okay. So I have a question for you that's kind of not related to your books or anything. It's just something I've been asking all my guests lately. So what has surprised you most about life so far?
You mean in general, in my whole life?
Yep.
There's that old expression about mice and men having the same plans and they never work it out that way. Life changes in so many different ways that to believe that there is a straight path between things, most of the time, it's not going to be that way. I think what I've learned now versus 5 years ago or a year ago or 20 years ago, I think is different. But I realize that the more we see with COVID, particularly, the less control we really have. And, to believe and have faith in that, each of us are really in our own video game, trying to be the superhero of our own game. doing the best we can. And I know there's this guy named Jocko Willink, and he talks about, he's a Marine, he's a really tough guy, but one of the things that I took away from that is that whenever anything bad happens, his answer is always good. And I think, the answer is that real growth around anything usually comes from some pain point, some risk that we have to take. And so when we do that, the likelihood of a straight line path to where we're going is pretty small. So it's the ability to adjust, the ability to get back up, because it's going to be a perpetual knockdown. You're not going to get where you want to go that easily. And that's I think those are some of my thoughts, off the top of my head without thinking about it. It's a good question.
Okay. So if you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
If you have kids or grandkids that need to learn how to read, you want to get a book or two or three. No. That's, for me, putting in the hands of parents a book that can bring them together, that I can be a part of their special time, giving them a facilitative tool to be able to really reinforce the stuff they want their kids to know, but from a different voice, and to introduce them to concepts like race, or, I have someone that's blind, or I have someone in a wheelchair, like, to start to understand and embrace diversity. All of those things can come from a kid's book. And that's what I tried to do with these books, was I tried to make it easier, give a tool for parents to have some laughs and to have some fun, to have creative moments with their kids. As I said, mine's 15 years old now. And so those experiences are in the past. But for new parents and grandparents, that's something special that hopefully people can get from these books.
Great. So how or where can people get the books?
Easiest thing to do is to go on Amazon. So if they go on Amazon and they type in Dave Gerber, or they type in A Robot's Journey to Find a Heart, they'll pop right up and they'll be right there.
Okay. And if listeners would like to get in touch with you, either for your children's books or for what you do in the rest of your life, how can they get in touch? The
best way is to email me directly, and that's my last name, Gerber, at Synergy, SYNERGYDT.com. That's the best way. You can find me on LinkedIn. Instagram is Conflict Healer. That's probably the best way. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being here today and talking about this. I know I had you on the show before talking about what you do more in your professional life, but I just was fascinated by this offshoot of writing the children's books. So thank you for coming and talking about this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
And I'd like to thank the listeners for being here today and listening. I have a quote for you to carry with you through your week. And the quote is, "Kids who read become adults who lead." And that was said by Kate Olson. So we have a great show planned for next week. My guest will be Rocky Singh Kandola, and the show is called From Hurt to Joy. And Rocky has a very, I think I would call it rocky story. He has gone through, I think, more than most of us can imagine. He is actually a convicted felon, and he's also a successful entrepreneur, and I guess tune in next week to hear, a story you're going to say, I wouldn't believe that. but it's true. It's his true story. So next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. And I'm just going to say bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.